Hello there, reason people, PoohBear here, and welcome to my channel. And we're obviously just listening to a little bit of the InC project. So today I'm just going to go over the installation of InC and really a bit of the user interface. So this is not going to be like a real techie stuff, so we're not going to be swizzing around the back. It's going to be more about really how can we adjust certain lengths, how can we add new instruments, and a few other of the little controls which we've got going on. So the installation is obviously quite straightforward. You go to the Dropbox, and for Windows users you must run this GDI Fix. If you don't, you will crash Reason. If you've never seen Reason crash, then load this project up and you can watch Reason crash. So you need to run that. Yes, you'd be prompted, security, just say yes, 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 and just go through that. If you had any issues, which you shouldn't do, because all this is a GDI pull, I've also done a restore GDI settings, so it just restores them back to the default. In the description, there will be a link to this particular document which talks about GDI objects and what it's all about if you want to know. And basically in that file, you'd see this particular line with a value after it, because I'm actually changing the default value from 10,000 up to 30,000. Obviously, the next thing you're going to want is one of the Reason files. As you can see, there's a couple of different flavors. Obviously, that's going to be 9 instruments. I've actually ran the 16 instrument one on my laptop just to see how well it performed. Now I've resolved all the, we can use larger buffer sizes, and it worked. I was quite surprised it did work on that laptop. This one here is a 16 voice one, but it's obviously using the FreeVST T-Force Alpha Plus. That's actually a trance. I call it a trance VST. It's kind of designed around that way, and I thought it'd be interesting to see what that sounds like, and I was pleasantly surprised with that. The one you was actually listening to is the one with the drums and effects, so this one's been built on, and that's the one we're going to look at today. These are obviously extremely similar, apart from they don't have the drum and effects built in, but the rest of how it all, and the same with that one, how it all hangs together. In fact, that one has got some effects, but how it all hangs together is the same. So when you actually first load it up, this is obviously the actual Reason project itself. These are all your instruments over here. You don't have to worry about the fix counter or the counter fix. That's something else. That's just a workaround I use for a counter, purely for monitoring. We'll go over that in a minute as well. So this is the main section. It even tells you at the top. So transport bar. You shouldn't really start and stop your transport whilst it's running. If you do, it kind of resets all the sequences, and so everything will suddenly be falling on the same steps. If it's running and you start it, fine. If it's stopped and you run this, it's actually fine. Before, I think in the older project I said you had to run the transport. Because I'm now only using one LFO to drive everything, yeah, it doesn't matter, because it's that one LFO which is driving the whole lot, so it keeps itself in sync. So you either need to start it before or afterwards, e.g. for recording, and I'll talk about the recording side because you can actually record your session. So the first thing we need to do is prime it, and this is called the primer. So you just click on it, and I said 5 seconds. It doesn't matter if you leave it for half hour, it's not going to make any difference, or you just leave it for a few seconds. Basically what it's doing, it's randomizing the lengths of how long it's going to play each phrase for each instrument it's got. And that's actually based on this times length. So times length of -1 is actually 16 bars. You could bring that down to 0.5, so it'd be -0.5, and that would be 8 bars. I recommend you do not go any lower, because obviously phrase 35 itself is an 8-bar phrase, so you'd be cutting it short in a way. I say in a way because even though we're setting this, say, to 16 bars, what happens is I take this value, I happen to times it by 3, and then I'm multiplying it by a random number, and then I'm adding it back on top of that number so I can get a length. So the shortest time this project could run for is theoretically, obviously it depends on your BPM as well, is around about 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes. The maximum, obviously, if it's set to -1 in this particular case, should be something like around about 104 minutes. Again, obviously, depending on your BPM. The project I outputted the other day using the alpha, which is this setup, I used the alpha VST, I pumped that out. That was what, an hour and a half. So that was like 90 minutes. That's how long that actually ran for in the end. You don't have an option to say, I only want InC to run for this long. It's randomized. You know, it improvises itself. So once we've primed it, we can then just go ahead and hit our start button. Now, if for any reason you're having issue with this start button, this is the other start button. You can actually hit this one, but I just like my, my attention button here. When you do start it up, don't expect to hear anything for probably a good 30 seconds, a minute, because what it's going to do, as I say, because we've randomized everything and then we've added, as I say, we've got -1 at the top, so that'd be a 16 bar. It's going to wait at least 16 bars and then you might get an instrument, but because everything's randomized, everything could be randomized a lot further down. So you could be waiting quite a while for the first instrument to start. So just bear that in mind. So it's not broken if you're hearing that. It's just the fact that everything's got to sort of come into sync. And that's really how you run it. There's nothing really more to it. Down here, we do have the drum option. So you may have heard, so if I click start, we've got ourselves a drum, or you can go back to the traditional piano. This was me just experimenting around to say, okay, what does it sound like with a drum? Now we're actually running, as you can hear, we can't hear any other instruments playing. As I said before, we've got to wait for them to go through their process, at least 16 bars before they start kicking in. The whole point of you wanting this project for yourselves, obviously, is that you're going to want to put your own instruments in. So as I said, over here are the actual instruments. So you can just open any one of these up. Roll right down to the bottom. And as you can see, I've got quite a lot of default, you know, basic stuff already attached to it because I want you to keep it nice and streamlined. So you just grab yourself whatever instrument you want really, and then just attach it up. So it could be anything. You could go, okay, let's have you open. Make sure, obviously, you're doing a replace, so you're not putting it underneath. So you want to replace what's there. And this should now work. Obviously, you should try and get a patch or something. But no, that should be working. How can you test, or how can you say to yourself, well, I don't want to go and press start and wait X amount of time to actually listen to this? So what you can do yourselves, you can come up and on this particular programmer, you just use your arrow keys, or you can use this select and you can move it up. And these are all the different phrases. Now this is quite important. Once you've finished listening to your phrases, you've got to click the slave button and click it again. And you know you've got it right because this 0 will come up. So watch, so when I change it, this 0 disappears. I've got to turn that off, turn it back on, the 0's back in. And it doesn't matter if you left this on a different program number, it's now actually on program 0. When this is grayed out, so this is really, what we're looking at here, this is for program 2. So these are all my settings I'm using for program 2. This will actually count through, so this is what we're just visually looking at, and what it's actually doing is something different. When this does get to number 2 though, this will be displayed in red, and when it's in red, you know, okay, that's live, so this is actually the live data it's actually using. Again, for your reference, this one here is a counter, so when this gets down to 0, you're actually going to move on to your next phrase. You may see this paused. You'll only see it really paused if there's blocking, and blocking occurs because in InC we can't go more than, say, 3 phrases in front of the lowest instrument which is playing a phrase, and this is how I now block it. So we do a block and you may see that frozen. So don't panic, that is perfectly normal. And that's about it really. That's all you should really be touching in here. That's the other thing. This is set up for a buffer size no bigger than 1K, so that's 1024. If you had a real bad, a low performing system, you had to go to 2K, you're going to have to go around and change all these delays. This is obviously set up at the moment to 24.3 milliseconds. It should be 23 point something. That would be a 1K delay. And the reason we need to have the delay is because I'm actually doing a loop back within a combinator, and that will actually cause a whole buffer delay to come down to change the sequences. So actually a 1K, you could say this is more optimized for 1K buffer size than it is for a 64 buffer size, because the 64 buffer size will actually go up, flip, do some changes, and this is still going to wait its full 23 milliseconds because this has got a direct link, so there's no latency, CV latency coming into this unit. I've caused it. So because I say with the combinator we're actually changing some stuff, some of the sequences stuff in here. They're all turned off and they get turned on automatically when they're needed to play, and also their pattern is selected, and that's done by the combinator itself. Some other goodness is all the mixer channels. Obviously you can see they're going into a bus called for record, and yep, you probably guessed it, that's for recording. But you also can add your effects or something else over that. I'll talk about them in a minute, them hammers, something I'm playing with. So for record, so this is where I've thrown in some sort of global effects. I did have other different effects in here, but I changed them to stock. So obviously it'll all work for you. The big difference, obviously on this mix channel, I've got the record source and we've got ourselves an audio track. So as long as you make sure that this is armed, when you hit record, you will actually record yourself out an audio track of the session. So, where is it? Can I click on that? Will it bring it up? There it is. There's the audio track. So if I was to hit record now, hit that, we start getting our data in there. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, quite straightforward stuff. Nothing special there. Now, what I would say to you is make sure that once you've obviously done your recording, right click on it, bounce, and bounce clip to disk. And once you've then saved it out to disk, delete it. You don't want to save this project with this audio file because at the moment all these projects are under 10 megs, and if you save it with the audio file in here, you're going to have yourself a gig project, and that's what you're going to have to load up the next time you come to it. So bounce it out. You could probably, I'd recommend, don't think, oh, I'm going to master it first or do something else with this audio first. Seriously, bounce it out, create a new project, call it your in-C mastering. So you can just import your exports into that for your mastering side. That way, as I say, I'm going to be releasing some newer versions of this with some different algorithms and some different features in it. I'm open to requests. Maybe some other people could come up with some other ideas of what to put in here. And so I can just roll this out, and you know that if you pick up a new version, all you've got to really go back through and add the instruments again, or add some new instruments, and you'd have to worry about anything else. So if you added loads of mastering stuff, where you'd lose it. As I said, what we want is to delete that out. If you do make some changes and you have done some recording, I'll always recommend to do like a saving optimized. That's the best way of saving it, especially when you've been playing with audio and it keeps the file nice and low. The only thing I'm going to touch on which isn't live, and you won't see these, is I'm playing around with some Hammoods. They're set up in a special way, and my thoughts behind this is you might be listening to a piece and you might go, oh my God, something's come in, it doesn't sound right. From here, we can just drag the audio straight down. So it's a bit like using one of these mixer channels, but the difference is obviously, and I didn't quite mention that, like where I drop that Europa in, really I drop that Europa in, get my sounds going, and then I'd set my levels. So it's up to you where you wish to set your levels. I've set them all around just below 20 on that particular scale. There's plenty of headroom, so they could go higher, but that's what I've decided to go for. And that way, what this is doing is inside every single mixer channel, there just happens to be a line mixer, and I'm just dragging the volume down. Now, the advantage of doing it this, it might seem convoluted by doing it this way, is so I've pulled down, say, instrument number 6, when instrument number 6 moves on to its next phrase, it will automatically push this back up to full volume, and you start hearing it. So you're not having to work out or going to view it, say, are you going to move on? Are you going to move on? And when this is actually playing, you will see these bop up and down because when I change to a next phrase, I'm using a little bit of gate information which drops down to 0 before it pops back up again, and you actually will see this move. So this is like a bit of a nice indicator to say, oh, instrument number 4 has just changed its phrase, instrument number 7, or whatever it happens to be. So you'd see them pop up and down. The only other thing I've got, and you might want to drag it around, is just this simple monitoring. And all this monitoring is doing is the top row will show you the maximum phrase an instrument is on. That's all of them, so it just looks at them all and goes, which one's got the highest? And it'll also show you the lowest phrase from here. If you really wanted to know which one was the lowest, but I can't guarantee it, and the same with the highest, because there could be multiple ones on the same phrase. They just happen to be higher than obviously the lowest one, so it'll come up. And I didn't really want to get into this side of it with this particular video, but that's what these are. You get a little red dot, and that will show you the lowest one on this particular case, and down below we've got the highest, and it'll be a little red dot to say which was on the highest. But as I said, it'll only show one red dot. So at the moment it's showing number 1 because they're all on the same pattern, which happens to be pattern 0. But these are all on 0 as well. So it's like the lowest port with the highest number is given preference. So 2 numbers the same, it'll always come down to the lowest port it'll show you, but it gives you some sort of indication. And that is really it. There's not really much else to it. As I say, you can record it. The important thing is whenever you load up this project is to prime it up to start with. As I say, that sets the length, and then you're just quite happy to kick it off and just let it go. As I said, because it's on the randomization, oh look, here's the countdown, so I can see this one's going to take another at least 16 bars. Well, it's actually a lot more than that, but you can see how quickly it's coming down. If you find, this isn't actually a good one, if you find that this goes out of sync, your pulse, there is a slope down here, and you can change this delay. I've got it set to something like 24 milliseconds, which is the same as the other delay, so it should really be in sync. But if you're finding things are going out of sync because maybe you've got different buffer sizes, you may want to come down and have a play with this. So there we go, so I can just cut that one out if I wanted to. I was hoping to see one of these whiz up and down, but it's not going to be nice to us. Well, that's in C for you. You may notice the sound of the drum is going boom, boom. What a lot of people don't realise with little LFO is it actually loops back on itself. So this actual LFO, even though it's this side of this LFO, because this LFO gets turned on when we hit our button at the top, it actually is pulsing, or it's changing the amplitude. And this is our main pulse, so it doesn't matter if the amplitude is changed for that, because it's just looking for a signal. But that's the one which is going off to control the drums and the piano. When you select the piano, in fact, let's do it, it turns this LFO off, so this is no longer pulsing, so you get a constant, the normal basic piano pulse. But as I say, with that one, you can hear it, it goes boom, 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 boom. Funny enough, I had this drum on for a piece I outputted. I rather liked it. I did feel the drum was rather strong, but interestingly, I put it on my headset, which I go walking with the dogs, and it's not a brilliant headset. And so the bass, because this is quite a low drum, it's way down into the sort of below sort of the 80 hertz mark. So it didn't come through too strongly, but I could just about hear it, and it was quite nice. So you could always EQ that out afterwards. There's nothing wrong with you trying to put something like Tonic Mint's, what's it called? I'm going to call it an AB thing, but it's not an AB thing. I think I call it an AB thing because it's got an AB on it. It allows you basically to transpose. Oh, there we go. AB. Oh, yeah, see, look, AB transpose. So you could drop that on one of the players, so you can obviously shift the octaves down or up above your instrument. Make sure it's right above your instrument, because obviously all the sequences are above it. Right. I really do believe that is it, he says. Yeah, I really do believe that is it. And so I'm going to say thank you for watching, and I really do hope you enjoy the versions of INC you're actually getting from Reason. Yeah, technically, I think what's going on is absolutely brilliant. Obviously, I have, you know, the results I've been getting out of this, I've been really, really, really happy with. I did a version, as if you've been following the series, I wasn't so happy with the way I was doing, handling the blocking and all sorts. So it's all been rewritten. It's all been actually redone, and I'm going to do another walkthrough video and probably remove that old video because it is so far out of date. But yeah, as I say, I hope you do enjoy it. We're still down to just the 2 devices, which is the dual CV source and obviously sequences you're going to need. Obviously, if you haven't trialed it, it's worth a trial. This is a great little device. I know I can't remember how much it is. I know it's not like a cheap one for what it is, but at the same time, you know, as I say, it's got quite a lot of stuff built into it, and there's a lot of stuff I haven't even touched, because I know it's got a lot of MIDI stuff, and I haven't touched that, which is quite funny, because obviously I do a lot of generative stuff, and I have used this. I used this in my last generative project, actually, for handling the gate stuff, because I really fallen in love with this latch, which is obviously to do with a lot of sample and hold, but it's got this latch stuff which comes out the back, which I've been using a lot for a lot of stuff. So yeah, I've got a lot of erms coming out now, which means I'm struggling, so I should just shut up and say, go and enjoy yourselves. Thank you for watching, and bye for now. And it's no good me just pressing that, because all I'm going to do is hear a boom, boom, boom. But there we go. Right, bye for now.